Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking on a topic that honestly sits right at that scary intersection of public data and, well, your private life.
It really does.
And we're not talking about, oversharing on Instagram or that one password you reused back in 2012.
No, not at all.
We're going after the truly invisible data.
Yeah.
The stuff that has already been gathered about you to form this complete and honestly exploitable profile.
Exactly. And our sources show this reality where your private data isn't something you're, actively giving up. It's something that is silently, constantly being harvested.
Harvested from where?
From public records, from data breaches. So our mission today is really to analyze how this exposure works, look at some recent really high-stakes failures, and then, most importantly, give you some immediate, actionable steps to start regaining control.
Okay, so let's define the scope right away. We're calling this whole process the invisible harvest. This is that massive, non-consensual collection of your life story. Your name, your address, your financial indicators, all pulled from government records, courts, corporate breaches.
And it's so crucial for you, the learner, to get this distinction. This isn't your social media activity. This is data from municipal filings, data broker acquisitions, leaks.
It's different because it's tied to things that are critical to your identity, right?
Right. And once it's exposed, it's accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime. It's permanent.
And I think that's the moment it gets real. The moment you realize that huge parts of your existence have been compiled and sold without you even knowing. It shifts the whole conversation.
It does.
It goes from a theoretical privacy risk to an immediate vulnerability. It forces you to ask, how much of my digital shadow has already been mapped out?
That is the essential question. And it leads us right to our first bit of engagement with you listening. Before we dive into the specifics, what is the single piece of information you believe is most vulnerable out there, but also the least protected?
Is it your physical address? Your date of birth, maybe?
Let us know what you think. Just leave your thoughts below.
Okay, so now let's look at the systemic failures that really brought this whole problem to a head. This is where the sheer scale of it all becomes unavoidable. We have to talk about that massive exposure event in April 2024.
This was a pivotal moment. I mean, really a turning point. That month, a hacking collective, they call themselves US DoD, they executed this just unprecedented exposure event.
And the numbers are just mind-boggling.
They are. They spilled approximately 2.9 billion records of U.S. citizens into the public domain. To put that into perspective for you, that's roughly 9 times the entire U.S. population. It's a staggering volume.
Okay, but how? How does one group even get their hands on 2.9 billion records? I mean, what kind of place were they targeting to get a number that colossal?
Well, the sources suggest this was a highly aggregated leak, so that means they likely targeted the data brokers themselves.
So they went straight to the source.
Or they compromise multiple layers of institutions that rely on these records. So everything from marking databases to, poorly secured government systems. The key wasn't one single source, but the massive stitched together profiles they managed to steal.
And what was actually in this unprecedented exposure? What are we talking about here?
We're talking about the core components of your identity: full names, social security numbers, physical addresses, and phone numbers, the absolute foundational elements you would need for identity theft.
So this was quickly labeled something that creates an insidious wound, right? Because the consequences aren't just immediate, they're long-term.
Exactly. The sources point out 4 immediate dangers. First, you have heightened financial risk. Your bank accounts, your credit, they're all just inherently vulnerable now.
Okay.
Second, severe privacy erosion. Your personal details are just permanently compromised. Third is total identity exposure, with all those critical details circulating widely. And then, maybe the most worrying part.
What's that?
Long-term harm. Harm to your personal sense of trust and safety that can last for years and years.
When that level of data is just out there for anyone to see, the conclusion is pretty clear. Your control over your own personal story is it's severely diminished. Your vulnerabilities are laid bare permanently.
And if that breach was the immediate disaster, we have to focus on the long-standing infrastructure that made it possible in the first place.
Data brokers.
Data brokers. These are the for-profit aggregators that are basically the fuel for this whole ecosystem.
They're essentially compiling a digital version of you and then selling it piece by piece. The sources give this frightening, compelling example of how casually they treat this information. The SL Data Services failure.
This incident is a perfect case study in just pure operational negligence. Nearly 645,000 sensitive files. To be exact, it was 644,869 were left completely exposed.
On what? Like a server?
On an unprotected cloud server. And this wasn't just marketing data. This included actual background checks, criminal histories, detailed social media account info. It was totally unsecured. Anyone could have downloaded it.
That is the truly chilling detail. These brokers don't just know what you buy. They know your vulnerabilities, your history, your location. They've stitched together everything they can find on you, and they're selling it for profit.
And usually without any consent or transparency.
None.
And the sheer volume and sensitivity of that particular leak raises a really crucial point for everyone listening. What stands out to you more about the data these brokers collect? Is it the volume, almost 645,000 files in one go, or is it the extreme sensitivity of it? Things like criminal histories and background checks.
We'd love to hear your perspective on what concerns you most.
Let us know in the comments.
So, okay, let's break down the mechanics. How does a simple public record turn into a weaponized profile? The sources detail this chronological pathway, and we've broken it down into 3 distinct phases to make it really clear for you.
Right, so phase 1 is what we call acquisition and indexing. This is the foundational collection. Basic data gets extracted from publicly accessible government records, court filings, DMV databases, property records.
And this is all technically legal public information.
It is, but it forms the bedrock of the profile.
Okay, so then phase 2 is the profile synthesis. This is where the data brokers really get to work. They scrape, they purchase, and they use algorithms to stitch all these scattered fragments together.
Your DMV data, a court filing, your address.
To these terrifyingly detailed, coherent profiles that just map out your entire existence.
And that synthesis, that stitching together, that's the point of danger. A single piece of data is, well, it's mostly harmless. But when you merge 200 pieces, you get a clear, predictable human being.
A blueprint of their life.
Exactly, a blueprint that an attacker can easily manipulate.
And that leads to phase 3, public exposure and weaponization. This is the USDD moment. When these huge breaches or targeted leaks happen, that comprehensive profile that was made in phase 2 gets dumped onto the dark web.
And your blueprint is now permanently available to any cybercriminal who wants it.
So understanding those 3 stages, from index to synthesis to exposure, is just key to grasping why, just deleting a social media account doesn't solve the problem.
Not at all. The core data is already out there, just waiting to be aggregated.
So if the data is out there, how is it being actively used against people? Let's focus on the real nightmares, the specific ways this raw data gets turned into a destructive force.
We can basically categorize the immediate threats into 3 main types of harm. First, you have what's called identity assassination.
Sounds dramatic.
It is. This is when criminals use your exposed data to completely impersonate you. They open new credit accounts, file fraudulent tax returns, they commit crimes in your name. They essentially become you financially.
Wow. Okay, what's the second one?
The second is the very serious threat of SSN-based financial fraud. Because Social Security numbers were in those huge breaches, attackers use them to unlock major financial tools. Large loans, new mortgages, applying for government benefits, all in the victim's name. And it all becomes the victim's financial responsibility to clean up.
And the third?
And third is precision phishing and targeted terror. Because the aggregated data often includes sensitive history from, background checks, criminals know exactly where your personal pain points are.
So the phishing attacks don't look generic.
Not at all. They'll reference a specific creditor you have, a specific doctor, or even a family member. It makes them incredibly difficult to spot. They know exactly where to cut deepest.
So the ultimate takeaway from the sources is, well, it's grim, but it's necessary. The question you should be asking isn't if you've been exposed.
But how badly? How badly has your profile been compromised and weaponized?
And that realization is really the call to action. You have to move from just worrying about it to actually investigating.
Yeah.
So we need to detail the necessary first steps to, as the sources say, investigate the crime scene.
That's right.
Where does someone listening even start?
Okay. Actionable step 1. Check known compromises. Use a service like haveibeenpned.com. Do it immediately. This will quickly tell you if your email addresses or any associated passwords have shown up in previous major data massacres. It's the easiest first check.
Okay, simple enough. What's step 2?
Actionable step 2. Search public breach databases. This is a little harder, but it's critical. Check national or state-level public breach databases where they're available to see if your full name or social security number was specifically listed as part of that 2.9 billion record exposure we talked about.
Right. And step 3.
And finally, actionable step 3. Consistent monitoring for activity. Regularly scan your credit reports from all 3 major bureaus, review all your financial accounts closely. Identity theft often runs on a delay.
A delay.
Yeah. The first suspicious transaction might not pop up for months after the data was first exposed.
Okay, this brings us to the empowerment part of this, the survival guide. We need to shift from just analyzing the threat to actually building the walls. So let's detail the 4 most effective defense strategies the sources recommend.
First and foremost, freeze everything. And I mean it. Implementing a credit freeze with all 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, is your single most powerful defense.
Explain why that's so powerful.
When your credit is frozen, no one, not even a criminal who has your social security number, can open a new line of credit in your name without you temporarily unfreezing it. It just blocks unauthorized accounts cold.
That's a critical point. It's much more than just a fraud alert. Okay, second strategy.
Build your walls. This is basic, but it's non-negotiable. Use strong, unique passwords for every single site, and you have to leverage a reliable password manager. A lot of the stolen data is older, but if you still use that same weak password,
You're still vulnerable.
you're still vulnerable to what's called credential stuffing.
Right. Okay, third.
Third, erase your tracks. Because data brokers are the ones doing the aggregating, you have to proactively opt out of their databases. Now, this is a tedious process. You have to contact each broker individually.
And there are hundreds of them.
Hundreds. The sources do note that specialized removal services, like Malwarebytes Personal Data Remover, can automate this process, which, for many people, is a necessary step given the sheer number of brokers out there.
And the final piece of advice, which needs constant daily application, stay paranoid.
Yes.
The sophistication of these targeted attacks means you really have to trust nothing. Question every unsolicited email, text, or call that references personal details because they are likely using harvested data to try and fool you.
Vigilance is your daily armor. Awareness and proactive protection. They're not optional anymore. They're your only defenses against this level of digital exposure.
And that really summarizes the core lesson of this deep dive. The unseen world of data aggregation is real, and critical parts of your personal data are, right now, available in the public domain without your knowledge or consent.
The threat is active, the exposure has already happened, and the vulnerability is immediate. The goal now is clear. Stop just consuming the news about these breaches and start acting on your own personal security.
Check your exposure.
Secure your identity.
And this leaves us with a final, provocative thought that really defines this ongoing battle. In an era where corporate negligence and systemic leaks are constantly eroding your boundaries, what does it truly mean to reclaim your privacy before they consume everything you are? It really requires constant active ownership.
It's the fight for self-determination in the digital age.
So we want to know, after hearing about the scale of the 2.9 billion record exposure and the threat of these data brokers, which of the 4 defensive steps are you going to take first? Freezing your credit, building better passwords, erasing your tracks, or just staying paranoid?
Tell us, Lou.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.